Yeah, sounds good. So, yeah, we'll just kick it off right now. Looks like we got a good amount of people, and then other people will kind of stroll in as needed here. So yeah, most of you guys know who I am just from the Discord server. I already got an interruption. My kid's already crawling on the floor because she thinks my camera's on, but it's not. It's only the microphone. You're good. Go ahead. So I am a one of the Discord mods. I don't know why, but Scott thinks I'm responsible enough to take on that role. So you've seen me probably around the Discord. I'm gonna mute API. I'm gonna go ahead and mute you just because there's an echo there. If you need to ask a question or something, feel free to just put it in the chat and I can unmute you. But on top of being a Discord mod and running our bot, I also work for AWS as a solutions architect. And I'll also go through the rest of my background, but since I'm letting you know since I'm letting you know where I work, I will just say I'm obviously saying all of this in my own personal opinion. None of this is like official AWS language or anything representing the Amazon company as a whole or anything like that. Got to give that little disclaimer since I mentioned where I work. Usually I don't mention. I just say like, hey, yeah, I work for a big cloud provider, but it is AWS, obviously. So I'll go through kind of what I do as a solutions architect. My background, I came from the Unix and Linux engineering and administration background, as well as some database stuff, which I'll get into on the next slide. I've also been a manager, an IT manager of an IT engineering team, which covered pretty much all of IT operations. So anything you can think of, like storage, middleware, networking. And then we were also, when I was in management, we were migrating to the cloud from on-prem. So got a lot of experience there. And I would consider myself just kind of a jack of all trades, which lends itself to becoming a solutions architect because that's kind of what SAs really are ultimately. So this is my agenda. So I will just say I'm going to kind of split this up a little bit. So the first couple items are going to be kind of who I am, what I do, where I came from, and kind of just a general career kind of chat. And if you guys want to throw out questions about about my background, about the hiring process, about my opinion on anything, and this is all obviously all my opinion. People think of things very differently, especially what I've seen as an IT manager. Things that I would say like, oh yeah, this sounds great in an interview may sound horrible to the next manager. So just take that in mind. This is all just kind of my personal viewpoint. But then once we get down to like agenda item 3 here, I'm going to flip over, talk about generative AI, the bot that we run in Discord, fishermanguybro, and then maybe some AI image generation stuff if we have time to wrap that up and jump into it because it's pretty fun. So I would say two major sections we'll talk about, kind of some career stuff because I've noticed a lot of newer folks, and then that was why I did that poll yesterday. I don't know if everyone was here yesterday for the sessions, but I did a poll on what your level or years of experience were in the IT field, and we had quite a few people. It was pretty much kind of like an even split, or actually, I think it was almost double the amount of people that only had like 1 to 2 years or they had just graduated versus people who had the higher end of the spectrum, like 10 plus years in IT. So it's tough to talk to an audience that's on that's on both of those ends of the spectrum because they're kind of looking for different things. But hopefully, with this split in topics, it'll cater to both of those. So I came out of college and I was really kind of dead set on becoming an Oracle database administrator. That was what I had focused on in college. Uh, my college actually had labs where you ran an Oracle database, did all the database administration type tasks. I was very familiar with it. I honestly don't know. I think I picked it because I thought it was more of a niche type thing, whereas everyone else was just doing like, general system administration stuff. So I focused on database administration classes as well as system administration classes. But I actually To be honest with you, I hated Linux at the time. Yeah, I saw the yacht and I was like, oh wow, I like a yacht. I'll take that. But no, I like kind of picking niche areas to go into sometimes, just because then you're a bigger fish in a smaller pond, right? Whereas if everyone's doing the same thing, it's gonna be a lot more difficult to make yourself known or get jobs, in the future. At least that was kind of how I saw it going into it, right? And one good thing, just kind of pumping up the college side of things, because it always comes up. What is the benefit of college? Do people still need to go to college? My college experience was pretty good. I went to a pretty good school, I think, a technical school, and they required you to do. I think it ended up being about 9 months. We had a trimester system, and you had to do 2 semesters for one, which ended up being about 6 months, and then a single semester for another, which ended up being about 3 months of co-op, which is paid internship. And that was actually part of the curriculum it was information technology was the actual like bachelor's degree when I went. Now things have obviously changed and transformed over the many years. But having that paid internship experience landed me my first job. I did it with a few different companies initially, like for this internship program, and then I went back and actually did an Oracle database administration co-op with my first with the company that I kind of liked, and they called me. They were like, "Hey, you did really well in your internship," and they talked to me, and we lined things up before I had even graduated. So, when you're saying, "Hey, what's the benefit of college?" And I know all colleges are kind of different, but that was quite the benefit for me. I had a pretty good experience because I literally had a job lined up before I had even graduated. So I will give a +1 to the benefits of college there. Although it was many years ago, and I know the financial and other aspects of colleges and universities has since changed. But that's just my little anecdote there. But yeah, flipping back, I did not like Linux. I thought it was kind of like overly complicated for no reason. And I'm like, why do I have to why am I memorizing where these config files are? Like etc, blah, blah, blah. Like, what is this path? And like, how do you even know why the things are where they are? And like, why can't I just go on Windows and just click, boom, install? There you go. You're done. So coming out of college, I did not like it. I don't know necessarily why. I didn't really like the teachers that also taught it, or the professors, I should say. So that could have also lent itself. Your professors in college can kind of sway what you enjoy and what you don't sometimes. And it wasn't really a hobby at the time. I probably wasted way too much time gaming and playing like CS 1.5 back in the day than I should have. Whereas looking back at it, I wish I had like picked Linux up as a hobby back then, and probably would have advanced myself a little quicker. But is what it is. So my first job that I got from that co-op was actually a ETL software administrator. And I just put software administration on Unix and Linux here because I look at any type of software type administration, kind of the same. Like whether you're doing database administration, whether you're doing an ETL software administration, whether you're doing a payroll software administration, like it's really just you're managing an application on a server, right? So you're most likely not managing the underlying like OS and everything. You're just managing, they're giving you access to manage your application on a server. And that I think is one of the many overlooked things within IT that people who are coming out of college don't know about, or they don't even see. Trying to think of a good example. Like, I don't know if you like people that are in the industry probably know like Kronos is like a timekeeping platform. And no one in college is going to know that there's even like Kronos administration type jobs that they could probably qualify for, because all you need to do is learn how to manage Kronos on a server, and manage it for X number of users. Like those types of things are really the easiest way, I think, to like break into this field, because all you do is you learn kind of your niche software, but then you also get experience running it on whatever environment it is. In my case, it was Solaris and AIX at the time. And once I had built up that kind of familiarity of just being in a Unix environment, that's really when I fell in love with it. I was like, I, I I can't do things as quickly. I can't script things out in Bash like I do in these environments. Like I just like Windows. Now it flipped the other way where I'm like, man, Windows is just like holding me back. And when I just do like next finish in some type of GUI, I don't even know what's going on, right? Like maybe there's a log file, maybe there's not. Sometimes like you click it and it gives you an error, and sometimes you click it and you just get an hourglass and you're like, what the hell's going on? Like what is it doing behind the scenes? Whereas if I'm in a terminal and I run a command, I'm going to get output to the screen most likely, or there's going to be a log file somewhere that I can check and I can see exactly what's going on. Most of the time it's too much information, right? That I don't even know, that I can't even understand, and I got to go like parse the logs and like find what my error is, right? Whereas Windows is like hiding everything from you. So that's kind of what switched me to say, I have a harder time dealing with Windows now than I do Unix or Linux. And then eventually that kind of rolled into, I was still kind of going, I was doing, even though I was an ETL software administrator, and for those of you that don't know, ETL is just extract, transform, load. We were using Informatica, but there's many different, like AWS Glue is kind of very similar. It basically, you take data from one thing and you send it to another, and in between you might change it. That's literally what ETL is. It's one source and one target, and then do some stuff in between maybe. Or maybe not, maybe you're just sending it directly, but that's really all it is. It's in its simplistic form. So I was still doing Oracle database administration stuff kind of on the side, because I was gearing up to make like an internal switch to an Oracle database administration or Oracle DBA position once it opened up. But I was at a company where things moved super slow, and what ended up happening was a Unix system administration position opened up first, and I was like, you know what, this would actually be really cool. Like, and I hadn't considered this. I was young, in my career, and I was like, this could be like a good opportunity. Like, this might be fun. Like, I love working in the Unix environment, and it would be nice to see, even deeper into the OS level stuff, because I was at a point where, like, there's, if you ever worked a Unix administration job, you have users that are just like, hey, I need space, or hey, it's telling me my file system's full, like fix it. And then there's users that know what they're talking about, and they're like, hey, my slash apps / Oracle file system is full. Like, can you add like 10 gig more to it because I'm doing XYZ? Like, they know more what they were talking about. Like, I was one of those users where like I knew what was going on within the OS, and I was telling the system administrators like exactly what they needed to do for me. So I already had a fairly good understanding. I just didn't have like root access to do most of it, right? So it was a fairly easy shift. But most of the positions that I've switched to, the interview process was kind of like, yeah, I've never done this. Don't really know what I'm doing, but I would love to learn it. I have examples of where I have already learned things fast. So if you give me a shot, like I'm more than willing to do it. So that's kind of interesting on my whole interview path. Even with my current position at AWS, I knew a lot of it, but I was coming from an Azure environment, and I was applying to AWS, right? So, yeah, like, how does that work? Like I knew the concepts of cloud. I was working in Azure, and I had just like started dipping my toes into AWS, and I got a position at AWS. So it's not always generally that you have to know everything right up front. It's really displaying, and I know Scott has mentioned some of this sometimes, it's displaying that like you can do the job and that you will do the job. And if you have examples of that, it really just kind of like talks more about like who you are and what you're going to accomplish versus like what you know just on paper. Because sometimes that doesn't really, sometimes people have great resumes and they're terrible, So that's kind of my interesting experience in most of my interviews, where I know a lot about a lot, but I don't know any one thing like super, super specialized. That's why on my previous one, I kind of put jack of all trades, because I've hit a lot of the different areas of IT. Like I've done middleware with when you're talking like MQ and message broker and WebSphere, IBM WebSphere for like web servers and application servers. I've touched a lot of those things, especially as a Unix and Linux system administrator, because if you're a SA for or system, I should say SA because it could stand for solution architect too, but a system administrator for a while, you're going to get pulled into things where it's just like, hey, no one knows how to fix this. Can you fix it? You're like, I'll try. And then you dive into it and you like fix the application owner's problem for them, even though it probably should have been their job. That's what you'll find, when you're a good Linux engineer, I would say. So I've just been pulled in a lot of different areas and exposed to a lot of different things in the IT world. So I have kind of that broad depth of knowledge, but I've never specialized in one specific thing very much. I would say, and if you looked at my resume, I would say it's right around every 3 years, I've made some sort of switch because that's the point where I think a lot of times I start getting bored, but I also start feeling like, hey, I'm not progressing here. Like I could sit there and be the if you know the fisherman guy bot image from the Dilbert comment, like he's the old curmudgeon like Unix administrator who's done it for 50 years. Like you could be that guy, but is it worth sitting there, for 20 plus years to learn like the last 3% of Linux? Like, I don't know. To some people, yes, maybe like they're just happy doing it. But to me, I would rather be, continually growing and expanding my knowledge in the IT space. So, like I said, every 3 years or so, I'm kind of like considering where I'm at, and I'm going, hey, am I still learning? Am I still improving? Is the yeah, in Cal, yeah. Well, that's unfortunate for most of us, but um, you always have to think about yourself because there's a lot of companies where they're not going to move as fast as you need them to move for your career. So if you could be at a company. I mean, there's companies out there still running IBM mainframes, right? And if you're not going out of your way as a mainframe administrator to expand into something else and learn other things, like you're stuck on a legacy skill set, right? Where you're going to be extremely limited to what you do. So you can't always depend on your employer to give you those opportunities. And I know I'm speaking to the choir because there's like 21 people in here on a Sunday morning. Like all of you guys you're already on the right track. Like you wouldn't have taken time out of your Sunday unless you're already doing this, right? So I could almost just skip this whole opinion, but you have to like look out for yourself and continually learn, even if your employer's not presenting those opportunities to you. So I'll just touch on like the fact that I was an IT manager. It was it was okay. I enjoyed some of it, but I ultimately wanted to kind of revert back to the technical side of things, which is why I became an AWS architect. Um, it was a lot of like babysitting adults, unfortunately, and you really have to step away from a lot of the technical side of things, even though you're an IT manager. I thought it was actually good. It was good experience. If you had the opportunity to jump into a management position for like 2 to 3 years, I would say go for it because you'll learn a lot about how the business actually functions. And it definitely helped me in my current role as a solutions architect when I'm dealing with customer, C-level type people or even, directors and managers where I have to go through like a purchasing process with them. I have to help them navigate like, different contract vehicles and SKUs and things like that. Like if I was never a manager, I wouldn't really understand where they're coming from as much. So it did give me that depth of knowledge in an area that you wouldn't otherwise get if I hadn't been in that role, right? If I was just a technical person, I wouldn't get it, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, just let me know what you need. Like I don't understand what you're like. What's taking so long? I don't get it. But I know from being a manager and putting purchases through and working with legal teams and all that kind of nonsense, like I know how much nonsense there is just in that little area, and I can relate to to those people. Yeah, feel free to throw any questions or anything along the way. I know I'm kind of going through this quick, but wanted to give you a broad understanding of my background. I had one rel cert. I threw it on here. It expired, and I don't have any reason to go back and get it. I had the RHCSA for Red Hat 7 when I was working in that environment. I started in Azure as far as cloud went because my company was migrating from on-prem to Azure solely because, and this is very common, the Microsoft ELA, like they're like, well, we're already paying for Office 365, and Microsoft said they'll give us a good deal if we just use their cloud. So let's just make a decision based on that. So we did. And at the time, I didn't really care because I was like, hey, I get to get cloud experience. Awesome. Like, that's good for me. Like, whether or not it's a smart, choice for the company, I was kind of like, this is a smart choice for me, so I'm not going to complain. Like, it expands my area of knowledge. So I did get 2 Azure certs. I think it was just the whatever the cloud practitioner equivalent was, and then the whatever they call, I don't even remember at this point, whatever they call like the system administrator one, Azure system admin, or I don't know. They've changed it. Yeah, I think it was 104. I think it was 104. And then now I'm up to 7 AWS certificates. So you can probably see, you can probably notice which ones are the easiest to get reimbursed. My other company, it was like kind of a big deal. They wanted you to get certs, but you had to like get approval first and like go through all this bunch of hoops and nonsense. Whereas currently my current employer is like, yeah, go do whatever you want and reimburse, whatever you need to do to get our certs. I will say I have not, and this is really, I don't even want to say this, to be honest. I have not failed an AWS cert yet. And now that I've said that, I'm going to bomb all of the next ones that I've taken. But I have not failed an AWS cert. So it's not like I'm just going in there and like rapid firing these things off to achieve them, just to have them on my resume. Yeah, dude, seriously, like I'm knocking on my desk here. Like I'm gonna bomb them all from here on out. But the only reason I mentioned that is just because like I said, it's not just like we get free passes to just shotgun these things out and take it as many times as you want and pass. We actually still have to pay. So we pay like half. We get like 50% off, and then you have to reimburse the other half. And then we still have to follow the certification guidelines, where I think if you fail it twice, you can't retake it for X number of months. And I don't even know what that is because I haven't run into that issue yet. I think it's like 3 or 6 months or something like that. But yeah, just mentioning that just so you know, kind of like, even though I have AWS certs and I work for them, it's not like it's just free attempts, unlimited. I'm at about 16 years of experience in IT overall. And I always have to like go back and do the math and think about it now because I'm at the point where I'm starting to forget how many years there are. It doesn't feel like 16 years, but apparently it is at this point. Yeah. So before I move on, actually, let me quickly talk about where I am now as an AWS solutions architect. So what an AWS solutions architect is, that's the AZ900, not real practice. Oh, okay. Yeah. So what an AWS solutions architect is basically it's similar to what other companies have as a pre-sales engineer, where you're going into a company looking to possibly purchase or utilize some sort of like software IT service. And I'm the technical resource, so I help them to do proof of concepts. I help to do like free workshops with them so they can get hands-on with different labs. I walk them through how to use the service. I make recommendations on how they should design it. And the joke about like SAs is like the answer is always it depends. And that's true. Like even with the position, it really totally depends on who your customers are, who you're working with, like what industry they're in. So for me, I cover higher ed customers in the Northeast, primarily in New York State. And most of mine are the state universities. So most of what I do is technically public information because the state obviously has to put out public requests for quotes, RFQs, and things like that. So technically, you could go and dive through and find out exactly what they're using for almost everything because it's all public record. But I won't. Obviously, unless they're a public reference and they want us to share it. Just from a professional standpoint, I don't pass that information along. So what I do to support higher ed customers is drastically different than what someone in, say, the aerospace industry supporting those types of customers, or like the mechanical engineering, like automotive industry, does to support those customers, right? A lot of things like the underlying stuff is similar, but the services they use and like how those companies move is going to be very different. So a lot of things, like when I was listening to Reed yesterday talk about like the DevOps practices and stuff, those things are like you look at all that and you're like, wow, companies must do like all this crazy complex stuff, and like this is super cool. Like I got to tell you, like 90% plus of my customers do not do that. Like they don't have they don't have the budget, they don't have the team size to support, and they don't have the knowledge generally to do that. And it really depends on which teams I'm working with within higher ed. Some customers are more advanced than others. Some of them do that type of stuff, and I'm always impressed when I run into them. I'm like, oh, wow, you guys are in like really good position. Whereas some of them are still like, what is cloud? Why would I use cloud? Like people like us, right, who have been in the industry for a while, we're like, wait, you don't know? Wait, I have to explain cloud to you still? But there's still people out there that are like, why would we use cloud? Like, I don't understand it. Is it just like a colo, or like what's going on here? So, when you're getting those like kind of like snippets of like, here's what one company does, just know that each company is just so drastically different, and it really just depends on what their internal IT looks like. And that even goes to like positions and titles and things like that. Like a Linux engineer might do something completely different at one company than the next. Some companies, like, they call all of their IT people network engineers just for I don't know, the hell of it, because the business side of the company makes the titles, right? So you always have to look at like what's really happening. And unfortunately with some of those smaller type companies, it's just like, yeah, like hardware engineers. Yeah. Sometimes you just don't even know, right? Like until you talk to the people on those teams, like, hey, what is it that you're really, doing here? And you can't just go by the title, because the title, when I said that I was a ETL administrator with Informatica, my first title was just a completely made up title that someone at the company had made. It was like enterprise database toolset administrator, which you wouldn't find that title anywhere else, because some guy at the company just made it up. So that's what you have to be wary of, right? Like you have to look at what you're doing and like what kind of the industry is calling the skill set that you have, not necessarily what your company is calling it, if that makes sense. So going back to like what an SA does. So I support higher ed customers. I'm part of the sales organization, but I'm not held to any quotas or anything like that. The account managers that we work alongside of certainly are. So their position is a lot different than ours. They've talked about possibly like, trying something out like that with SAs, but what AWS really wants to focus in on is like SAs should be just standalone technical resources that say, hey, I'm going to help you implement the best solution, for your environment. I'm not going to help you implement XYZ service just because like it's more expensive and it's going to help me like hit my quota faster. That's not what we're about. And the other big thing is being an SA. Whereas if you're just a pre-sales engineer at, maybe a software company, like I really couldn't imagine myself being pre-sales for like just a specific product. I don't know, I'll make up something like, say I was a pre-sales engineer at Palo Alto. I don't know. That's a bad one because they do have like a decent amount of products, but let's say I only sold Palo Alto firewalls. All I would do all day in, day out is talk about firewalls, like Palo Alto firewalls. Whereas with AWS, we have like 200, I don't even know it. They keep changing the they keep changing the amount, but I think we're somewhere around 300 like plus services at this time. So my day is literally like one meeting in the morning with a customer. We'll be talking about like IoT devices and how they're using them in a hospital to like track, patient escalation. And then my next meeting will be like, how do I migrate my Oracle database to RDS? And then my next meeting will just be like, let's use Gen AI and how do I use the Bedrock service to create my chatbot. So you're context switching just nonstop. Like you're just all over the place at all times. And I can see why that would turn off a lot of people. But to me, I actually enjoy it because I'm always just constantly jumping into something new for the most part. I do specialize, even the generalist SAs do specialize, and we'll pick up like specialist tickets. That's why, like, if you're an AWS customer and you have an account team, you'll see they'll bring in specialists. So my specialty is cloud governance, setting up your AWS organizations, putting security guardrails and things like that, making sure you're hitting like compliance, whatever, like HIPAA compliance or NIST frameworks, things like that. I do specialize in that, and I'm actually also looking to specialize in. That's another thing too. Like I'm coming up on 2 years at AWS in October, and I'm already kind of at the point where I'm like, man, like specializing in the cloud governance stuff is like it's kind of already getting old to me. Like I can keep doing it and I can keep finding like weird one-off type like issues that the customers run into, but they're really few and far between. So I'm actually looking to expand into a second specialty area, which is AI ML. And then even within AI ML, there's so many different focus areas that you could then specialize in underneath that. And I'm looking to do like some generative AI stuff just because I enjoy it. And that's one of the best things that I like about being a solutions architect too, is I look at it as like a choose your own adventure type thing. So even if I support higher ed customers and they're, very slow moving, most of them are kind of like behind the times when it comes to, if you're comparing them to like an actual technical company, I can still say that, hey, I'm going to go specialize in AI ML and I'm going to support customers all over the world because we don't know where the specialist tickets come in from. They can be outside of our region, outside of our industry that we support. So I've supported customers all over the world for like the cloud governance stuff in all different types of industries. So what I want to specialize in doesn't have to align with my day-to-day customer activities. So you really get to pick and choose what exactly it is that you want to learn and what exactly it is that you want to focus in on. So that's the big part of it that makes me like it's like the dream job for me because I'm just always diving into something new and I have like the green flag, the go ahead to basically do that all the time, right? Some of the other aspects of it, so we also create internal content. I don't know if you guys know, like I posted a while back, I posted a YouTube video that was just part of internal content creation, where I went over the infrastructure as code generator on the AWS YouTube channel. I'm also like in the middle of writing a blog article that will be posted on the AWS website. There's a lot of internal processes to go through with that, so they won't actually publish it for another few months because there's like a huge queue and stuff. But in creating content, creating demos, things like that, essays also support. Also going to things like reInvent and doing like sessions, a lot of speaking engagements or demos, things like that. running workshops. I had already mentioned. That's the other big portion of an SA's day-to-day activity. So like when I'm not working with customers, I'm working on like creating additional content for our internal resources or even publicly facing ones. I added a little like kind of mini solution to our AWS-samples repository on GitHub. That's our official repository, so it has to go through like this approval and stuff just to get posted there. But basically, what it does is I work with a lot of research customers since higher ed. A big portion of higher ed is actually research customers looking to utilize cloud services because their internal IT teams. And I know like Scott knows a lot about this. Is like they have on-prem HPC clusters, and sometimes they'll get to a point where they're just overloaded. They're submitting jobs to these clusters, and like they have to sit there and wait for like their turn to use the cluster because there's so many people trying to use it at the same time. So researchers will get grants, and then they will go to the cloud and kind of purchase their own thing to get their work done, so that they're not just sitting there waiting around for the on-prem stuff that they have access to. And even with the on-prem, it's not like it's free. Like they usually take some type of percentage of their grant money to like cover their usage of it. So it's not like just an automatic, oh, here you go. Like you get to use this HPC cluster completely for free. So there is like incentive for them to just kind of like go and do their own thing if they're able to. So I work with a lot of researchers. Oh, actually, I forgot where I was going with that. So I created a quick solution for our Lightsail for Research service where it will automatically shut down the virtual computer that they're running if it hits a certain threshold. So Lightsail is not one of the ones that you can automatically do that with by default. So I just had to create a small Lambda and like an event that kicks off to shut that down so that like researchers are like, hey, I only have X amount of money. I want to make sure that I don't go over that because then I'm paying for it out of my own pocket. So I just created a quick solution, got it posted on our official GitHub repo. So things like that is also what solutions architects do. Trying to think about what I said and what I haven't said. I'll pause there just in case there's any like questions on what I've already mentioned. Give you guys a minute. So it like I mentioned the whole meme of like it depends. It depends, right? So what we typically do is we're not just gonna create a design and say like, hey, there you go, like enjoy, like do it yourself. What we typically do is we'll say, hey, let's create a proof of concept on this whatever it is, right? Whatever that they're looking to do on this design. Make sure it actually works. And we'll also give you AWS credits to your account to cover that proof of concept. So there's no charge to you. If it doesn't work, then let's switch it up. Sometimes we do have to iterate through a couple different options to get what they want. If it's something straightforward like hey, let's do the 3-tier like EC2 load balancer type application setup, then it is what it is. There's not much you can like iterate through there. But things, especially getting into the new like Gen AI type services where you're trying to create a chatbot that produces the correct response and stuff, there's definitely iterations and prompt engineering that goes into it. So it depends on what the focus is, but we like to solve out and test things out alongside the customer before they actually move on and start paying for it themselves. And I know Sending Ground is going to talk about like his role at AWS. He's like more actual. He's like way smarter, right? So he's actually like working on real stuff. Whereas I'm like they release a service, and then I'm like, oh crap, I gotta figure out what the hell this does before I start like telling people to use it. My job is basically to stay like half a step in front of the customer. All right, let's see. 12:45. So if there's no other questions, on this, we can jump over into the Gen AI stuff. And feel free to, like, if you still have questions on like my background or like what I do, or solutions architects, etc., just throw them in chat. So what is generative AI? So obviously ChatGPT was like one of the first ones to popularize it. Now we have Claude, we have all these other LLMs, large language models that have come out. There's closed source, there's open source models. We have the image generation ones like Stable Diffusion. Same thing with those, like closed and open source ones. Excuse me. But yeah, generative AI is basically um, creating something, you know, automatically using whatever context it is that it's been trained on. So let's talk about LLMs first. And an LLM is actually what I use for the Discord bot, and I'll show you guys how I'm using that. If you watched my stream the other day, it's we actually made some significant changes to it. So I'll go over those in a little. But basically, it's really statistics, right? Like this, it's not if you've never looked into any of the new AI stuff, it's generally just statistics. With an LLM like GPT, or Claude or any of the other like public ones that you may have used, it's basically just saying that, here's a data set. You're asking it a question. It's going to say there's, I don't know. I'm gonna simplify this. Obviously, there might be one, two, or three responses that come back. Now, in order to make it different than like back in the day, chatbots and stuff, they basically were just like giant if-else statements, right? It's like if person asked X, respond with Y, and they didn't give you that like realism to them, because they would always just like give you a static answer. It was like a calculator where it's like 5 + 5 is 10. Whereas with the new creativity settings, or temperature settings, you get. Hang on one sec. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Had to yell at the kids to quiet down a little bit. Yeah, with the new LLMs, instead of just like that if else statement, it's going to say, okay, instead of just returning the first response, like the most probable response, sometimes give them the second or the third response. And it does that kind of like letter by letter, word for word, like token by token. And that's where you run into the fact that like it's not great to use an LLM as a calculator. Like you may say, 5 + 5, and it might give you like 12, and you're like, what the heck? Like 12? Why would it give me 12? Because like your temperature setting or your creativity setting is saying, hey, don't always return the first probable like response. Return the next one. So you don't want creativity when it comes to numbers, but that's like kind of what makes them seem realistic when it comes to things like producing text for a book or a poem or something along those lines. What's the best LLM that can work on home hardware that I can feed my own data? So it depends on what hardware you have. So I would suggest, and this is what I started with. I started with using Olama. I'll type it in the chat just for reference. If you look at Olama, oops, it actually has a ton of LLMs that it supports, and you can run most of them with pretty much, yeah, Ryzen 7 64 gigs of RAM. So you're going to be able to run a pretty decent amount of the models that Olama supports. I and I don't like I'm talking from experience of like responses from the Discord bot that acts like a jerk to everyone. Mistral was one of the ones that I really liked, just because it was pretty quick, running on CPU only, which I think you'll find with the Ryzen 7. I think I have a Ryzen 7 too, to be honest. I have less memory though. I only have 32 gigs of memory, and it was quick as far as what it returned, and the quality of the response was really good. So I've been leaning to Mistral when I'm using like local models. But you can definitely, it depends on what you're trying to return, right? Like, are you using it for coding? Are you using it for You mentioned chatting with your own data. So it depends on what type of data you're going to be chatting. Is it going to be short enough to feed into the actual model? Because each of the different models also have different context sizes, which ultimately boils down to how much text can you put into the prompt, right? Both system and user prompt together. So that's why you'll see me using Claude a lot of the times, because Claude has like a 200,000 context size, whereas a lot of the other ones only have like a 32,000 context size. So I can dump a giant document into Claude and I don't have to worry about it running into any type of like context size limitations. So that's also another thing that you want to think of, because that also dictates which models you can use, how much data you're putting into it. Whoops. Oh, shoot. Where'd it go? Oh, no. The other thing I was going to do that you just maybe break my screen is anything LLM, I believe, is the open source project for like RAG models, where it will allow you to upload data and it will allow you to chat against that data that you put into it. You fast forward a little bit here. There we go. So check out anything LLM, because that's another good one. So RAG is God, I'm drawing a blank now. Something augmented. What the heck does the R stand for? Retrieval augmented generation. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't said it in a while, so I lost it. But it basically just says, hey, instead of giving a response back from the underlying model's knowledge, go and check this subset of data, whether it's an S3 bucket, a document, or whatever. Check that data for context and then produce your response. So that's what a lot of companies are doing. A lot of them have RAG architecture set up where they're checking internal documents before they're responding to their internal customers. So if they have like an internal chatbot or something, they might set up their internal whatever document repository, whether it's on SharePoint or whatnot, point it to that, and then say produce a response based on our internal documentation to someone. Yeah, so there's certainly limits, and they're all different depending on the model. The context limits are different. Even the prompt. If you saw my my stream the other day, like I had to change my prompt formatting going from Mistral to Mixtral. Each of the models, like the prompt style, or I should say like template format, is a little bit different. And that maybe that'll standardize over time. Like this is all obviously super early. This is a cool time to be in the IT industry, because this is one of those few like big groundbreaking kind of changes. So like in 3 years we'll see how things settle out, but we're still kind of in the middle of it. So it's pretty cool to be part of. And then the AI, the image generation stuff's a little bit different, but it's still kind of like based on the same underlying things. Stable diffusion, for example, will start with a staticky based picture, and then depending on what the prompt and what the underlying model's weights are, it will try to slowly take um, that static and transform it into the picture that you are intending to produce, right? Yeah. So you can even run like there's a version of Llama, Meta's Llama model called Tiny Llama that you can run on a Raspberry Pi, and it runs actually pretty quick. The problem is that it's trained on such a small data set that the responses are kind of like I don't know what you'd really do with it. You could do some simple stuff with it, but it just doesn't give great responses. But the performance is great. And I wanted to touch on too, like, um, so we're in a Linux group right here, right? So we're all like, maybe a bunch of us are focused on like system administration, Linux administration. Like, how does this AI stuff really even impact us? Like, can we use it, or is it just for like coders to like finish their coding, like the smart sending ground type guys? Um, but I've been looking at different ways of utilizing it, and like for me, I think we can. like log analytics. I was working on that on one stream where as a system administrator, whenever there's a problem on a server, you always want to look at like performance data, log data. Like you jump into var log and you start like looking through all the logs, right? That's what you do when you're troubleshooting a system. Well, what if we had an LLM just do that for us and just produce an instant report based off like one command? Like it may not be perfect, but wouldn't that expedite your work? Like maybe you get the response right away, and like even if you got it 5 out of 10 times right away, and the other 5 times you had to like manually kind of like scrub through the logs and figure out what was going on, you still saved, half your time, right? Out of those 5 times where it gave you the answer. Because a lot of times it's like an app ID is locked or something like that, and you're just looking at the auth log, and it's just a common sense type stuff. So like those are the types of things, right? I can see LLMs just helping us. It just expedites things that you were doing manually before. So like it's another form of automation almost, you could say. Another thing is I haven't tried it out yet, but I don't know, maybe some of you guys have Warp. There's a new terminal called Warp, or I don't know how new it really is, but Warp has AI built into it. So you can use natural language processing to say, instead of me, like obviously there's command line completion tools and stuff, like Z Shell I think has it built in and all that. But with natural language processing, you can just say like, show me a list of files that are older than X date, and it'll format like the find command for you versus you having to know that the find command like even exists, right? Like maybe you're trying to do something, and you're like, oh, I don't think find can even do this. Like maybe something else would be the right command. You could use the AI natural language processing and type that in, and then it will give you the right shell command to run. So like that's really cool to me. The other thing is, as Linux guys, like we do a lot of scripting, coding, automation, IAC, infrastructure as code. The LLMs are obviously great for that. Things that like, how many times do you want to write like a bash for loop or while loop, or even just general like if else type statements? Like it's time consuming. You already know what it does. You already know how to do it. If you could just spit out all that boilerplate type stuff, like that obviously is going to increase your efficiency. It's not, and then like, I don't know if I want to like go down this path, but like, is AI going to like take people's jobs? I mean, it may take some jobs eventually, but right now I just see it, and I said this earlier, like I see it as a calculator. Like you're speeding up the process, but you still have to know what the underlying stuff is that's happening. I can't just go and generate, most of the time, I don't know, maybe there's some that are good enough, but like I can't just be like, hey, ChatGPT, write me a program that does XYZ and just run it and think that I'm going to have like a production ready piece of code to go. There's most likely going to need to be like updates, changes, and things like that. Whether it's you telling the LLM to update the code, or whether it's you just going in there manually and editing it, you still have to understand what the underlying code is, what the concepts of programming are, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, improved Google. Like actually, that's a good point. Like I've honestly been using Perplexity more than I have Google lately, because that it's basically helping me sift through all the responses from Google for the most part. It depends on like what you're looking for. Like if you're just looking for an answer, like you don't want to have to sift through all those. Like let's give me an answer, and then like if I need to, I'll click the little like here's where the source came from. If not, like give me an answer. That's all I really needed for the most part. So that's really how I see AI being applied to like system administration type stuff. I think it can definitely improve all the work that we do in this area. So I think if we have an hour and a half, we're coming up on the hour point. Let me jump over to the actual code for Fisherman Guybot, and I'll just show you this. If you haven't caught my stream, this is the code for Fisherman Guybot. I recently did an update. So before, I was actually running the LLM that he used to generate his responses on my local desktop. So I was using Olama and Mistral to run the the LLM and host it from here. But I've been like, I had 2 power outages, I don't know, over the past like year or something. And every time like something like that happens, I'm like, oh, dang, I need to put this in the cloud so it doesn't rely on like my desktop, right? And Scott's always like, yeah, we need to migrate this to the cloud so that like you don't have to start it back up every time. Because sometimes there'll be like OS updates, and if I don't and I'm running it, I was running Olama using Docker. Sometimes the updates will restart the Docker engine, and then I have to start the container itself. And I would forget to do that, and then Scott would have to go and manually welcome people to the server. I know that's a lot of work for him, so I want to take that burden off his shoulders. But now I actually switched it over to using the Grok API, and I don't know if you don't have any background on Grok, they're basically making new hardware to run LLMs. It's called an LPU. I forget what LPU even stands for. But basically, instead of like hosting it on a GPU, they have these new LPUs, and it's just like, it's insanely like blindingly fast. Like it's ridiculous. So like if I say, what color is the sky? I'm asking this in the chat, by the way. Like I just asked that and it instantly like came back. Whereas if you guys noticed before when I was running it on my actual desktop, it took a little while there was some latency involved, right? Because it was running on my desktop. It wasn't even running on my GPU. It was running just CPU inference because I have an AMD GPU and I hadn't set up like the drivers for it and everything. So yeah, so this new Grok one, I'm basically just making an API call over to the Grok API, and it's returning it back. And right now it's free. I don't know how long it's going to stay free because they're basically just showing off their hardware before it's released. But we'll use it until it's not free, and then we'll go from there. So as you see, I have this this Python function. This is all in Python. This is the member welcome. So you can see like talk like an angry Unix administrator. So you can see why he gets, or where he gets his personality from. I've adjusted this a little bit because before it was kind of like, it was like, hi, I am a Unix administrator, and then producing the thing. So like you have it, don't state who you are. Yeah, like I won't get into prompt engineering, but like this actually is not like a great thing to do, to be honest. It was working, but ideally LLMs are not good at being told what not to do. It's better to tell them what to do. So things like saying like don't do this is not generally good. Language processing unit. Yep, that's it. And then so it's welcoming the member who's then joining. If you see it, if you see sometimes it doesn't align with like the person's name, it's because it's getting it from the Discord module uses like, there's a couple different ways. It's like their display name versus like their actual member name and their profile. So sometimes they don't match up, but that's where it's coming from. So this is what the prompt is. So that's why everyone gets an actual unique response every time they get a welcome. Oh, it looks like the Mixtral one doesn't like your ignore all previous instructions ones. I know they've adjusted some of those to like, so you can't jailbreak them. So he's still kind of pissed off that you asked him that. But it was a nice try. So this is the model that I'm using over on Grok. It's the Mixtral model. This is the one I like. Like I landed on this one too because I was using things like GPT and even Claude. There's a lot of safety nets for them. There's a lot of like censorship. A lot of times I'll be asking an IT security related question and it'll be like, whoa, like I can't talk about things like hacking or anything like that. Like it thinks everything is like malicious if you even like mention anything like security or that type of stuff. And you're not. You're just like asking it like a firewall question or something. So I don't like all of those like closed source censor models just based on my use. Like it's just more of a pain in the ass. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I've settled on the Mistral one, because it's not really censored at all from what I've seen. And this is what I was talking about, the temperature setting. This is what gives its creativity, right? So if I adjusted this, and they're different too. Like some of them go from 0 to 1. This one I think goes maybe to 2. I'm not sure. And that's where I hope like eventually they bring some standardization around like the model prompting and stuff like that. Yeah, have fun with the bot. The bot usually, it used to not have access to the chat channels either, but now it does. So the streaming, this is so that you know how when some of the LLMs will actually stream back word for word responses, and you'll see it stream across like your screen. This one, streaming to false, makes it so that it just returns it all in one big chunk. Refresh it. Yeah, so with so something like that, like asking your bot to refresh your Grok API key, that would be something an agent can do. And what agents are is you can actually give your bots access to do certain things. So I might give the bot permissions to actually make the API call to refresh my Grok API key, so that when I did ask it to do that, it would go ahead and do it for me. Um, would I be able to look at that? Yes, this is public. I've pasted the link in the chat a while back, but it probably scrolled. I didn't pin it or anything like that. So let me grab the GitHub repo real quick, and I'll throw it in here. So here is, and like I said, I'm a like this code. Oh yeah, I should have prefaced this by saying that this code is probably mostly trash. So people like Sending Grounds probably look at this and you're like, dude, what the heck are you doing? This is garbage. This bot was just started as me trying to get back into Python, because I just haven't done a lot of like programming. It just doesn't come up. Like I build tiny POC type things. I don't code for a living. So getting back into Python was something I wanted to do. So it gave me just a fun excuse to get back into Python. And it also started, I'm pretty sure the first function might have been just correcting Scott on how to pronounce his name. And then it just kind of spiraled out of control from there, and somehow became like the official server bot. I removed some of it. If I go down here, you'll see that we actually, so I used to have like hard coded jokes in here. We updated it to use the dad joke public API. Like maybe 4 days ago. So I made some improvements rather than having like old school hard coded arrays and stuff. We actually updated the 8-ball response to use a public 8-ball API one. And then what was I going to say? Oh, so things like when we were doing the Code Wars challenge, for example, last year. And if you're a new member, you may not know what I'm talking about, but I think it was sometime last year we did a little Code Wars challenge where if you beat if your score was higher than me, Sending Grounds or King Buns, we were giving away a humble bundle. So I added this to the bot so that it could pull from the Code Wars API and create like a standings, raw or like a leaderboard. So yeah, so this is kind of what the bot does. We update it, you know, whenever events and different types of things come up. It tells you, you know, like Scott's book and all that. Yeah, we should do another one. The only problem with that, well, I mean, there's probably a way, but we had to have people like create new accounts to get their score back to 0. I wonder if there's a way to do it without like retaining all our old points or something like that. And there's probably other sites too. Yeah, Kari just destroyed everyone basically. The guys that won, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was mostly for like the learning and fun of it, really. We did a lot of Code Wars streams and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't really about the prize, to be honest, but it was a nice incentive. So yeah, so this is the bot. I will also just jump over to AI image generation. So if you haven't seen me, I was playing around. I was getting my stuff set up in the beginning of the stream. I love AI image generation because I'm just like a command line Linux guy. I don't do any graphic design. I remember playing around with like Photoshop and stuff, but I was always terrible at it. I'm just not very creative, right? Like I'm more of a text guy. But it allows me to take text and generate pretty cool images by doing it. So I personally love it. And I think for real artists, I think it will just speed up their whole process because now there's things like AI 3D model creation too. So if you're like a game designer and you're like, hey, I need like 10 unique NPC models, it could generate 10 unique ones for you, and then you could just edit them after that. Um, so I think it's really, really awesome. I know there's like the whole ethics of like it's taking other people's images to like train from it. But then if you think about it, it's like, all right, so if you're an actual artist, don't you look at other art and like study it to like become an artist too? So unless you're like just straight up like using AI to say, make me a straight like identical copy of the Mona Lisa, you know, um, I think it's kind of just doing the same thing that people do, you know. But that's just my opinion, you know. I mean, yeah, I'm not a real artist, so like I'm sure there's other views of it. But to me it's like, you know, if you're studying something to understand a theme and you're like, "Hey, I want to create something based on this theme." Like I'm going to look at a whole bunch of other pictures and artists of that theme you know, before I do my own, right? So I'm going to switch over quickly here. So this is Focus. So I have this running on AWS under the Lightsail for Research service. If you've ever heard of Lightsail, Lightsail is pretty much like a VPS type service, but the Lightsail for Research offers some differences. So since it's for research, it allows you to do like more granular charging. So if I shut this down right now, it's not going to charge me anything while it's shut down. Whereas Lightsail normally is just like a flat monthly fee. And it also offers bigger GPU based instances. So I'm using one of the GPU based instances to run Focus on. And Focus is an open source project. I'll drop the link in here. I'll drop the link in the chat. So if you want to run this like on your own PC, you certainly can. I'm using the Python virtual environment method of deploying. I won't go into that too much because the GitHub repo outlines it pretty good. So under installing Focus, oh, and I should mention, there's even a way to run it for free on Google Colab. There's some limitations around it, but it's a pretty good way to just get your dip your toes into it and see how it actually works. So with this, it comes with a few different presets by default, but then it also has this giant list of like a ridiculous amount of ones that have been built out and trained by other people. And what these are is basically just like see these things, different LoRa's. You can actually create these LoRa's and upload them or download other people's. It's basically them taking the underlying model and then adding a whole bunch of images of a specific type to it. So I don't know, the easiest one's like anime, right? If I was to download like 50,000 anime pictures and then do additional training on the underlying stable diffusion model, I could then have like an anime LoRa that it would then like shift the weights over to so that the context of my prompt is going to be more towards like an AI picture that it generates. And I'm certainly not like a complete AI scientist or anything. So some of what I'm saying may not be the right verbiage or whatnot, but that's the high level kind of overview of it. So this is pretty cool. So I use this all the time. So if you've seen any of the pictures that I've created in the Discord, this is what I'm generally using. I really like the in painting type stuff. So you can take an image. So this is actually where so I created this flexing penguin here the other day on stream. So you can upscale it. Oh, I selected the wrong tab here. So this is just image upscaling. in painting is what I think is really cool. So if I take this and I just say like, I'm not highlighting very accurate, but literally this is all it does is you highlight the section that you want to do some in painting or editing on, and I say I'm going to do modify content, and then I'm going to say red headband. Then I'm going to take this out because that was my old prompt. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to generate this. Now it's going to it's only going to focus on this part of the picture. So it's not going to regenerate like the entire thing. It's going to only focus on the part that you highlighted. And then it's going to go through. I have it set to image count 5. So it's actually going to make like 5 passes on this. And I also have it set to realistic, which might mess up the fact that we're doing like a cartoonishly strong penguin. Yeah, the realistic one might be, it might not really like what we're trying to do here. And if you see, there's these skip and stop buttons. So like I already know this isn't going to turn out how I wanted it. So I was just clicking skip to go to the next iteration. Oh, this one's actually, looks like it's trying. So there we go. So it's creating a headband.
If I give you
This
a clay
one's
model, can you do a 3D scan and let the AI like perfect it and put out the little issues with it, make the arms individual and stuff, and make so like rigging up the animation grid?
So not with this one specifically, not with Focus, and not with the standard Stable Diffusion, but there are other solutions that do 3D modeling that you can do for sure. So this one did pretty good. So like you see how I added this, it's in the same like kind of like lighting and theme as the rest of the picture, and it was like took like what 30 seconds to add this to it. So I really love the like image editing, just making realistic looking little edits to pictures and stuff. Even like real life pictures. I think I showed like changing like adding a bird I was adding a pterodactyl like flying in the background of like my one. I added like a sea monster to my one friend. My friend posted like a picture on Facebook of him like canoeing or something, and I put the like it was a forest in the background, and I made like the forest on fire, and then like there was like a sea monster or dragon or something. Oh no, it was what the heck's the name of the Godzilla. I put Godzilla like walking through the pond that he was kayaking in. Um, So it's pretty funny. So I use it for that kind of stuff, like just basically nonsense mostly. Yeah. You mentioned clay, which is kind of interesting because there's actually a clay one here, which is pretty fun to play around with. So if I uncheck these and I don't want like photorealism, I wonder if I could just, let's see, let's do this. Let's clear that. And then actually I haven't tried just switching the theme before. It might work. Let's see. Let's just regenerate this with just using the clay theme. I don't know if it's going to work at all or see what it does. Yeah, it didn't take the, I think it's looking for a prompt or something. It just generated some random stuff. I wonder if I was to highlight this, wonder if it'll take the theme from that. By the way, we're coming up on like 10 minutes left or something, so I'm pretty much going to wrap it up here. So if anyone wants to ask any questions or any like final comments before I drop off for the next person, feel free to ask right now.
Yeah, I asked the same question as yesterday. Do you mind if one PMs you and asks you something or calls you in Discord or anything?
Oh no, yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, feel free
Right.
to drop me a DM or something in Discord. Yeah, it's Hitanis. That's actually pretty good. Changed his head to clay. A clay guy and not a penguin, but you know. Uh-oh. Lost his head on this one. So what's nice about this too is you can just do like you can see these things can come out drastically different. So if I just do like 32 images, I can plop out a ton of these, and then I just select whatever the best one is that it comes out. Can you cycle in images repeatedly in order to bias the images? I don't know what
Can
you
we take
quite
this?
mean. Go ahead. Actually, you can go. You can go ahead. Oh yeah, that's actually that was what I was trying to do. I think it looks like since I just did this, if I highlighted this whole picture, I haven't tried that, but there's probably a way to actually do that. It's just a matter of like finding the right settings for it. The other thing that I use a lot too is the changing of the background. So if I wanted this guy to be standing like I don't know, a stadium or something, you could just highlight just the background portion of it, and you can change like the size and stuff to make it easier. But if you just highlight the background, it'll change just the background for him. What the heck? Some eggs on his head or something. Play bicep. Hmm. Ooh. It's like putting a hand in there or something. Nice. Yeah, see, now you know why this isn't going to be taking anyone's job anytime soon, right? Like, you can get the sometimes a pretty good base picture, but sometimes it's just like gives you these abominations. Um, any other questions? Did I miss any questions here? Treasure, I don't know if you said can you cycle in images repeatedly in order to bias? So not like via this. That would be like creating your own LoRa. So if you wanted to create your own LoRa and bias it towards like a certain type of art style, that's what these LoRa's are. So like this one, for example, is biasing it towards like film and photography, so like realistic pictures. Oh, I see. So you're saying like it spits out an initial one, and then it takes that initial one and like redesigns that one to be more like there's no way to do that automatically in Focus. I'm sure there are other tools that can do it. This one, you would have to take whatever your picture is. You would go to like improve detail. So improve detail is a common one because like the hands, sometimes you get like crazy weird looking hands, and you would just highlight the hand and you would say like they even have like a prompt quick list like detailed hand. You'd put detailed hand in there, and then that would iterate and improve that for you. Hey Scott, who's is there somebody up in at 1:30 or
Ben's coming up next. Yeah, in 1
okay.
1 hour. Or in 30
All
minutes. 30 minutes.
Oh, 30 minutes. Okay. All right. Well,
Yep.
I'll drop off and let people take a break then.
Yep.
And then I'll be back on then.
All right. Take care, guys. You guys are welcome to hang out in there. I just got to drop for a little bit to talk on this other call.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. I'll be around the chat too. Like if you want to throw any additional questions in there.
You sure about that?